of the rim. Got it! On the slam foul. Using Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot from Curry! Rebound Curry. And the dream season is now complete. The Golden State Warriors are the 2015 NBA champions. Their first title in 40 years.
I was always curious what was going through the Warriors' mind during that celebration. Like, sure, they were young, they seemingly come out of nowhere given that they were on nearly nobody's radar for a championship at the beginning of the season, but I felt deep down that they knew they'd never hear the end of it about this run. And after all, was it that unfair? The Grizzlies weren't healthy. People waited the entire year to see them rematch the Clippers just for that series to not even happen, and now they were finally at the top after having struggled to put away one of the absolute worst finals rosters of all time. So while they were champions and no one could ever take that away, I had a suspicion that they understood they needed to shut some people up in 2016. I was right. Well, I want to just say I apologize for us being healthy. I apologize for us playing who was in front of us. I apologize for all the accolades we received as a team and individually. I'm very truly sorry, and I hope we'll rectify that situation this year. That's a remark from Steph Curry, albeit somewhat sarcastically, said on October 15, 2015, as Golden State prepared their title defense. It sounded great, and it mostly played out great for 99.9% of the 2016 season.
One dribble, steps back, puts up a three, won't go, rebound tip taken by Spades, final seconds, it's over, it's over! Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
That was a damaging blow, and I don't believe it lost most of its sting until just recently. After all the accolades, all the records, that beautiful response of a season to definitively shut up all the naysayers, they fall just one game short of doing the things critics had made a habit of saying they couldn't. As I mull over the history of this run, I stop and wonder, would it have actually been better for this team to lose to OKC at the time? Not because it's better to lose before the finals, but because people probably would have forgotten about that mishap after time. However, losing in the finals directly to LeBron and the healthy Cavs team in the most humiliating fashion possible, when the argument was that they couldn't have beaten them healthy in 2015, it makes you think. Also, when it was all said and done, not one soul on the opposing side cared to acknowledge their struggles. Sure, Draymond missed a key game and their chief rim protector had been sidelined for the series, but given the events of the previous year with the Cavs, there was just no bail to shoot. Whatever the case may have been, the perfect season, all 8 months of it, were promptly turned into a meme in one swift motion, and nobody quite knew how they'd come back from it. I mean, how do you gather yourself from such a monumental collapse when you'd allegedly already reached basketball nirvana?
First things first, you put Kevin in the middle. Let's get that out of the way.
Oh boy, did anyone see this coming? Well, I actually did. Once they started saying KD was considering Golden State in the first place. After I heard that, I knew with 100% certainty that if he left OKC at all, he'd surely be choosing the Warriors. As long as he could deal with the backlash and mean tweets that followed, there wasn't even a real basketball reason to look elsewhere. Okay, not his video though. The Warriors. What did this do to the Warriors? Well, for one, it made them virtually impossible to beat. If there wasn't going to be an injury or infighting with the team, you simply weren't going to have many ways to deal with the most spaced floor of all time and probably the most talented one too. However, more than that, it seemed to take away a bit of their legitimacy as champions and future champions. Like, sure, they'd win, but who wouldn't win in that situation? Would anybody have beaten the Celtics plus LeBron? What if Shaq lost to the Bulls in '96 then played for them after? Yeah, you'll win titles, it'll raise the stock of some of the players' all-time rankings, but as long as KD's playing there'll still be that elephant in the room. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, 2017 happens, and a lot of playoff basketball we don't need to sit through ensues. The Warriors surprisingly lose exactly one game and go on to win the championship with very little resistance. Mike Breen's commentary always rings in my head around this point.
There it is, redemption for Golden State. One of the great playoff runs of all time is complete.
Yeah, it's redemption. They really stuck it to Braun, getting him and the crew out of here in 5, but it had a lot of artificial energy to it. It just didn't quite feel like the time the Spurs did it in 2014 because they had to painstakingly climb that mountain back. Speedrunning the NBA with KD to return to this point, okay, it's the first championship of a likely many with Durant, but nobody truly thinks this makes him the best player in the league, and while they're winning 2-1 on the Cavs Warriors scoreboard, 2016 is nearly carrying the same weight of 15 and 17 combined in a lot of minds. So let's go ahead and fast forward another year of mostly unnecessary basketball. Durant is still a Warrior, and thus nobody stands much of a chance except that Rockets team that gives them a nice scare. They get out of this one via a comeback that triggers once Chris Paul goes down in a pivotal Game 5, but injuries are a part of the game, and apparently so are missed threes. Thus, who would have thunk it? The KD Warriors are back in the finals against LeBron for a fourth time with no clear end in sight. Except this time it's even worse. LeBron has scaled the Eastern Conference with yet again a roster that is not worthy of the NBA Finals. It was so bad in fact that the promo graphic for that year's series is a current day NBA Twitter meme. So Bron performs possibly his greatest single game carrying act of all time and nearly nips one off of the God Squad before J.R. Smith squanders it. Something something three-pointer, something something Kevin Durant hits the same shot he hit a year before, series over in 4, Warriors champions, Durant again finals MVP. As a matter of fact, as we know that this is the last title this franchise wins for years, let's not forget the count. Curry has not won a finals MVP, which is a whole topic to be broached on its own, but for the sake of how people discuss narratives, his score is 0 in that category. Iguodala got it in 2015 for being LeBron's best defender, and KD has now won it twice with a pair of legendary Game 3 daggers to go with it. The Warriors are now up to 3 rings, and despite the basketball perfection, the obvious greatness, people still have the same question. When are they going to win one that was appropriately difficult for them to get? That wasn't necessarily just narrative talk either from a bunch of hating fans. Years later, Bob Myers would admit, quote, "It felt like, well, we just did what we were supposed to do and great job." AKA, there wasn't a serious challenge or an emotional toll. They were put on a stage with mostly inferior competition and they executed. In my opinion, the one thing that specific Warrior group could have done to really impress people would have been to unlock impossible territory. Give the world like 4 straight titles in dominant fashion, and then even though it's a stacked deck, it's still total obliteration of a professional league to the likes of which no one remembers seeing. And it seemed we were well on our way to that, as not only would the super team core remain intact, but they'd add former superstar talent big man DeMarcus Cousins to the fold. Alright, in hindsight, we absolutely overreacted to them adding a post-Achilles surgery player. However, if you really follow me, you know the rules. Everything in life is optics. And the optics of a former top player joining what was already the greatest and most talented team of all time after repeat championships? Not only had they not yet won a title that satisfied the doubters, they were the rich getting even richer. So, they started the 2019 campaign off with house money and some. However, some had begun to notice that the wheels were already beginning to come off. For the better part of a year now, KD had been going rogue in an offense that was mostly predicated on ball movement, and now the public was seeing the physical manifestation of why teams almost never keep it together long enough to completely gridlock the league. Once Draymond and Durant had that nice little talk in public, they could say everything was alright, but what they couldn't do was adequately explain why Durant hadn't committed to them past that current year. In everybody's mind, that meant three-peat or not, he pretty much overstayed his welcome with the Warriors, and it was probably time to go win one absent of a super team. Fast forward to the playoffs that year, and now the other part of why teams don't dominate forever was logging on.
And it's a three-pointer for Shabbat. And DeMarcus Cousins limping toward the bench.
It's Durant with Shumpert defending, and Kevin Durant laces one through. And he's hurt. He is holding on to his right Achilles as Harden works into Iguodala, who just picked up the Golden State foul.
After Durant's injury, which looked bad enough to potentially sideline him for the remainder of the postseason, the NBA world had the Warriors exactly where they wanted them. People often forget, KD did not just jump on top of that exact 2016 roster. They'd shed quite a bit of depth to accommodate him, and by 2019, that just wasn't very much depth at all. Without him, they were essentially the original core and a lot of randomness that just should never suffice as the support pieces of a championship team. So, what would you do now, Steph? Yes, we're looking at you. No more super team, no more insurmountable advantage. What are you actually made of when most of the responsibility falls on you and the competition is adequate?
Here for game 6, he's back in the Bay Area and getting...
Curry launches a three-pointer, puts it in, Curry on the drive, gets past, layup, bank shot is good. Curry with Tucker right with him. Curry launches a three, puts it in again! Steph Curry from downtown!
So right here we have the point in the Dynasty where all doubt should have died. While I agree that they hadn't won the championship to address the elephant in the room, they dominated basketball so effortlessly and thoroughly that one should have simply had been able to assume what they were capable of. They'd now killed all the talk about what a healthy Houston team would have done to them the year before. They couldn't even beat the depleted team in this year, despite having all the opportunity in the world to make that happen. The Warriors would go on to easily dispose of the Blazers in the next round with comebacks in all 4 games, advancing to the NBA Finals without Kevin Durant. That part is important because now they had their first opportunity in 2 seasons to shut everyone up the way we all know they wanted to. This amazing Toronto Raptors team with Kawhi Leonard at the peak of his game, if they could scale that mountain, everyone would just have to shut up and accept that this team, when healthy, could be successful before, during, and after KD. Unfortunately for the Bay, it was beginning to seem they might never quiet that talk, as without him they'd fall to a 3-1 deficit they could likely only overcome with his presence. For better or for worse, Durant decided to join the fray and take that challenge with him. It did not last very long.
Ibaka trying to stay with Durant, knocks it away, and Durant's limping. Durant goes down holding his leg. Ibaka goes up and is fouled down the other end, and Durant grabbing that right leg.
KD was done as a Warrior for the foreseeable future, and pending the results of the series, probably for good. Still, Golden State won Game 5 in impressive fashion, setting up the all-important Game 6 on their turf, where this would happen.
Thompson running the floor, and a foul. And Thompson grabs his left knee, now writhing in pain.
At long last, we've really got that emotional side of Curry that didn't make appearances often. For the most part throughout this 5-year run, he was much more of a silent killer. Not in the same sense as Kawhi, he just wasn't as expressive as, say, a LeBron. He'd dance around and shimmy, turn around and look at your bench, but you could never really tell if any of the talk was moving him the way you could see it on LeBron. The way Kobe would admit. The way you could tell a fire had been lit with Jordan. There was a killer there, but it was mostly calm. With Klay going down, for the moment, he along with everyone else could see the writing on the wall. The job remaining was to knock off the Raptors in what remained of the Game 6 and a possible 7th, so it was pretty obviously over. There was a fight, but it was over. When the smoke cleared, the dynasty was broken. 2 of the main 4 had suffered injuries that would surely cost them all of next season, and there was no guarantee Durant was signing up for that comeback story anyways. Spoiler, he was not. There would be no 2020 championship in Golden State regardless, and furthermore, now Steph would seemingly have to pay for what he'd done to the league over the previous 5 seasons. No more Klay to defend his toughest point guard matchups, no KD to lean on when he was doubled. This was the moment Warriors haters craved, and they'd get it, 4 or 5 underwhelming games. He too would suffer a season-ending injury, leaving the Golden Dynasty completely idle for at least a year. After that storm cleared, things were ramping up for a potential return to the top, this time with LeBron James the champion of the conference and league. It was at that precise moment we learned Klay would be sidelined yet another season, this time with an Achilles tear. Despite the visionary move from management to add Wiggins to the court, it was beginning to seem as if the Warriors' best days had simply passed. And there would have been no shame if that was the case. Although the Warriors wouldn't make the playoffs, falling just short in the play-in, Curry went on to have a year without any other stars on the court that rivaled 2016. Even Damian Lillard predicted that he was about to run into problems, and other than team success, he individually did not. Aside from winning a certain type of championship, you could see there was some belief amongst high-level players that Curry's success, while tipping their cap to it, might have been somewhat the product of a spectacular system. So he completely quieted that talk, having an MVP-worthy year, which was a precursor of what was to come next. But once again, regardless of what anybody had left to say, 3 championships, 5 finals appearances, and countless displays of basketball perfection would have been enough in the long run. Could Curry have played alpha in a situation like 2016 and actually won? It was a question worth asking, but not one big enough to make a huge difference in what he'd already proved. Speaking of which, I believe the man himself said it beautifully before the 2022 finals commenced. Quote, "I still have a lot to accomplish, but nothing to prove." Because isn't that exactly where we were with this whole thing a couple of weeks ago? After becoming the greatest shooter of all time, changing the game right before our eyes, winning countless awards, breaking countless records, seriously, what did he have left to prove? But before the 2022 NBA Finals, had Stephen Curry accomplished the feat of winning a championship against a worthy opponent without the odds stacked completely in his favor? Objectively, the answer is no. And as he'd once said on a random October day in 2015, "I'm very truly sorry, and I hope we'll rectify that situation this year."
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Steph Curry from way downtown. 33 for Steph Curry. Back to Curry. Step back, 3-pointer. Bang! Steph Curry drills the 3.
43-point game 4 for Steph Curry.
Just absolutely brilliant performance.
Curry with a left-hand dribble. Curry with a floater from the high post. Buries it.
Champs don't go away easy.
The Golden State Warriors have evened the series at 2. A gutsy win on the road in Boston.
Curry had 43 the last time he was in this building.
Perfect. Boston's got to take time.
Steph Curry from way downtown. Some Curry chaos here in the 3rd. Celtic fans starting their applause for their starters, who gave them an unbelievable run. But it will end in disappointment. Of course, Steph Curry with his dad, the emotion just pouring out. It might be his 4th, but it means so much. All the sacrifice, all the work. Boy, these Warriors are ready to celebrate. And that'll do it. It's over. The Golden State Warriors return to a familiar place.
There was nothing left on his list to prove, but for anybody that was still holding out hope that they'd be able to pin the lack of a worthy finals win against him, that too has disappeared into narrative wasteland. And it's not just his story. The Warriors went through tough, back-breaking circumstances over the last couple of years that might have broken other franchises as they look back to ponder years later if there could have been more. You could see all of that written on his face as it became apparent what they'd done. This was no 2018. You could tell this one meant something. And with all the pressure completely removed, I'd be afraid. The old core is still there. The young core develops while learning from and winning with the old. 4 championships in 8 years is more than almost any franchise could realistically ask for. And sooner or later over the summer, it'll probably sink into the rest of the basketball world. This story is still being written. The Golden Dynasty continues.